Kia ora koutou. Welcome to our webinar on Whakatere Nga Rerenga Hou, talking about our Māori Business Survey. We'll get started straight into it. I know everybody's pushed for time these days, so we're going to start with karakia to start us off and get us in the right frame of mind. So, whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mākina kina ki ita, kia mātaratara ki tai, kia hiaki ana te atakura, e tio, e hoka, e hauhu, te hei Māori ora. So mai hai mai. Welcome. Ko whakataha te maunga, ko waitangi te awa, ko ngapohi te iwi, ko ngā waki ki te tua whenua te hapu. Ko Angela Edwards tōku ingoa. My name is Angela Edwards. I hail from Aotearoa up here in Northland. I want to welcome you all and thank you for coming along to listen to our insights. Today is going to be a relaxed atmosphere. We're just going to go through some of the findings of our Māori Business Survey and the report that came from that. We had some wonderful information that came through from our small Māori businesses. And joining me today, we have Kylee Potae and Phillip Roth. So I'm just going to hand it to them for a brief moment to introduce themselves. Over to you, Phil.
Kia ora, Angela. Tēnā koutou katoa, nā mihi mahana kia koutou. Ko pukataraki tuku maunga, ko rakahuri tuku awa, nā Aotearoa hau, ko Phillip Roth taku ingoa. Likewise, Angela, it's just really nice to be part of this. We'll keep it really relaxed and also encourage some Q&A as we go through. So, Kylee, over to you.
Kia ora koutou. Ko Marotiri tōku maunga, ko manga hauni tōku awa, ko tuatini tōku marae, ko harauta tōku waka, ko Kylee Potae hau. Yeah, thank you for joining us today for a kōrero on our findings in the recent Māori Business Survey. I look forward to the conversation as it evolves.
Kia ora kōrua. So our Māori Business Survey was released. The survey was sent out just after lockdown. We did think about pulling it back because we weren't sure how people would receive it. And we were really pleasantly surprised that we got some great feedback. We had over 100 businesses that participated in our survey. And they ranged from your small Māori business owners, with the majority were less than 20 employees, and we right through to larger Māori businesses that had over 200 employees. There were some businesses from our metros, but a lot of support in our regions, right throughout the country. So we were really pleased with the feedback we got. So our format today, as we said, is pretty relaxed. We're just going to chat about some of the things that came through, and we've broken it down into three themes really. We're looking at people, planet and profit. Kylie's going to lead us through the people piece. Phil's going to lead us through the profit piece, and I'll talk about planet and what the survey spoke to us about. And then we'll take, like we said, we'll take questions as you've got them, and we'll just roll with it really. So I'll hand it over to Kylee, who'll take us through people. Kia ora, Kylee.
Oh, thank you, Ange. What was interesting for me in the survey this year is, and I suppose a little bit of a whakapapa to the survey, we kind of kicked it off in 2019 really as a way to get the market to give us direct feedback, rather than us assuming what's happening in the market and what the market wants. And I think our timing, although it wasn't planned this way, was quite ideal. So we did this in 2019, and you know, what was the most important thing to Māori business at that time was actually happy and well whānau. Now, what we didn't know was post-2019 is this new thing called COVID was going to come into play. And that hit us in March 2020. We decided then to do the survey again because we thought, you know, a lot happened and a lot changed. So we redid the survey in 2020 in this COVID environment, and what came out on top for our Māori business remained unchanged. It was still happy and well whānau. And I think it was even more heightened at that time because of what we learnt during COVID was around well people and how important that is. We then thought, okay, well, we've seen no change in that key focus area. And when we decided to do the survey this year, I suppose it's interesting as we're all adapting, I should say, to COVID. We wondered what would come out on the top. Well, again, happy and well whānau was still the most important thing. And I'm really heartened to see that, because what that speaks to me is the strategic intent of our Māori business, whether it be a small business or a large, still stays the course of a pandemic. So that sort of tells me that the long-term strategy around this is the right strategy for Māori. And there wasn't any need to divert from the course that was set in 2019 before any of us had knowledge of COVID. So that means that a lot of the strategic plans out there, if they're anchored in on this core focus, will still be relevant today. And I think that's really helpful in business in an ever-changing environment around you externally. If you can keep your environment stable internally, you've got a good chance of survival or charting through this new course, as our report is titled. We did also have second tier after this was actually profits and finances, which Phillip will talk about in the next segment. So I won't reach into that area. But just below that, under profit and finances, was cultural wellbeing and contributing to community and collective. And those have still remained in the top 4 that we've seen come through the survey in year 3. Again, I think that's fantastic because we're all on the right track with our plans. What was really interesting for me was in working with Māori business, a lot of us talk about at the coalface around our capital constraint, not having enough cash to invest in development or in growth or in whatever it is the entity might choose to do. But cash wasn't the biggest constraint. It was actually talent and people. And that did actually surprise me. And it's quite nice to have surprises sometimes because it makes you think differently as you're working in an advisory role. So that was really interesting. Our Māori organisations are finding it hard to recruit and retain good talent. And for them, good talent is people with the right skills to do the job that they need to do, but in a culturally appropriate way and with the use of te reo Māori. So there's a real gap in the market for us as Māori in business that I think is something that needs to be addressed. Now, you could say as a subset of New Zealand economy, this could be an issue in our more wider domestic economy, and that I would say is true. However, for today, we're talking about the Māori economy, so we need to have conversations about what we're doing in this space around education. And I think Ange will touch on it later, around the Sir Henry Ngata Scholarship as part of BDO's sort of our thought of how could we participate in finding a solution to this problem. So that is all from me on the people front. I'm really heartened to see it as the key focus area for our business. I'm not surprised. And yeah, I just think it was fantastic to see that come through again. That just shows that our strategic plans are on point. Thank you, Ange.
Kia ora, Kylee. Thank you for that. That was some great insights. There were wonderful things coming through. We know that people, he tangata, te mea nui o te ao. So it wasn't surprising to see the focus on people throughout this, and happy and well whānau being at the top of the list. I'll hand it across to Phil now, who'll give us some enlightenment on the profit that was coming through and the points that were raised in our report. Kia ora, Phil.
Kia ora. Yeah, thanks, Kylee, because that does lead in, really quite nicely to this next topic. And some of you may be looking and trying to decipher why we've got this big overt word called profit. But actually just wanting to unpack a little bit of what increasingly we're seeing. It came through the survey and in the mahi that we're doing. And I've got to also just extend that out to a lot of the mahi we're doing is not just purely commercial business. It also applies to a lot of NGO work and runaka work and runanga work, etc., and at the hapu level. And we're seeing a real, I'll say, resurgence and an interest in what came through the survey results, and I've got them here in front of me again, and closely behind Kylie's note in the happy and well whānau is actually financial performance. So it's sitting right up there in the top 3. And I think it's sitting in the top 3 for a real good reason, and that is governors and managers and whānau really appreciating just how important it is to be economically sustainable. And that's just one of my first points I wanted to focus on there, which is that first bullet point, that we're seeing a real refocus and context setting on financial oversight and stewardship. And you would have seen in the report, if you've read it, this reaffirmation of kaitiakitanga. And it's a really high-ranking theme in the report, and something that we're actually, as a team, we're all experiencing ourselves. And the second point there is, I think a lot of us are also finding, and in our governance roles as well, that we're seeing sustainability in the way it ought to be, which is a much more broader concept. Absolutely non-negotiable around the cultural narrative, the socio-economic part, absolutely non-negotiable around the environmental part, but increasingly we're saying, let's not forget what that financial lens needs to look like. And so there's a lot of focus going into recalibrating, enhancing and growing the level of economic sustainability reporting that's coming through. So that leads on to our third point there, which is we're now, profit's not a dirty word, it really isn't, but we're trying to drive this concept of creating wealth in a broader sense, not just for personal gain, but for the well-being of the organisation, the business, at a much more holistic level. So it's much deeper, it's wider, and it goes into the medium long term as well. And then those other themes, those elements that we talked about are all sort of integrating much better today, so that when some of the reporting cards and the dashboards are, that increasingly we're seeing at board level, they're bringing all these elements nicely into one demonstratable dashboard for the readers. A couple of other things I really wanted to emphasise as well, and it's in the report, and there were some great narratives and one-liners that came through. This is not a new thing for organisations generally, particularly within Māoridom, but a wonderful opportunity is this whole theme around financial literacy enhancement. And there was certainly a lot of references to a greater need yet again, dare I say it, even more so than 5+ years ago, to really invest in the knowledge, skills and development and acumen and capabilities of boards and governors and those in management positions. And if you're an owner operator, just understanding what it is to have more control and finger on the pulse within your organisation and business. So that was a really, really overt theme that came through the report, and one that we felt was really important to emphasise. I suppose the challenge and the opportunity that goes there, and the one that we'd like to put out is have a think about what is it that you could be doing within your business and organisation to enhance that element in the business or organisation to drive greater literacy awareness around the financials. It is often, and we acknowledge this fully, it's often there's a lot of fear around understanding the finances, and we actually totally get that, we respect it. So we're really keen to see how you can get good support around your financial understanding within the organisation. Another part there you'll see is performance measures and metrics to suit. And as I've said there, they just can't simply be financial. So we're starting to see a lot of board reports not being too complicated, not too bogged down with too many metrics, but balancing what we call non-financial indicators, which are more around the people and cultural narrative that we've talked about, and balancing that with a number of financial imperatives and KPIs which are relevant for the organisation. Also, we talk about lead indicators and lag indicators, so some are forward-reaching, some are more backwards-looking, but there's actually value in both, and it's getting the right sense of balance. And actually a number of respondees I saw in the survey talked about a balanced scorecard approach, which is very much what we're talking about here. It's looking at all those areas and elements of the organisation in balance with a lesser number of really good quality metrics that drive decision making and governance for the future. So there's just a few points that we wanted to cover in terms of that profit, but I'd almost restate that more the financial performance imperative. Just to finish off, if you've got a moment, I've actually just literally, ironically, come from a meeting a couple of hours ago. One of the businesses I have a close association with and act as chair on the board is with O'Kane's Bay Longline. I've just put the reference site in here. You may be interested, just to have a look. I believe it's a good example, but it's still a work in progress of a business that is Māori owned, that also involves fishing and activities on the land, including carbon farming and an opportunity to add value to waste streams. And you can see all of a sudden why all these topics we're talking about all come together incredibly powerfully, because we have to have good relationships with our runaka, with our key stakeholders, and yet profit and financial performance are still actually really, really important, because we need that value creation to reinvest back into other opportunities and innovations in the organisation going forward. So look, if you get a moment, you'll see the brand story was just recently updated, and a number of the things that Kylee, myself and Angela are talking about are actually nicely encapsulated in that one particular case study, and appreciate there are plenty more. Just before I hand back to Angela, a couple of things I thought about this morning that you also might want to think about under this topic is where impact reporting comes in, and that includes financial measures and financial performance. That's something we're very passionate about. It's an evolving area, but it definitely focuses on key performance indicators. And something we talk about as a group is the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. There are 17 high-level overarching goals, which if you Google UN SDGs, it's well worth a look. There's a huge emphasis and pendulum shift back to the socio-cultural narrative, which is very much the focus of the report. And lastly, there are just so many more opportunities around social capital and social equity, where organisations and businesses are truly working together so collaboratively in really smart, innovative ways. And, you know, as long as there's still a commercial imperative with those activities, I think there's exciting days ahead. And as the report says, there are actually a majority of people that are more excited about 2022 than they are necessarily about the challenges of 2021, which are just learning. So I'm going to close my kōrero there. Really encourage you to have a look at the website, but also what Kylee said and what Angela's now going to talk about is how we build those three elements together for good. So thank you for your time, and Angela, I'm going to hand back to you. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Phil, thank you. What I love about Māori business is you're talking about the balance and how it all works together. And, you know, people ask what's the difference between a Māori in business and Māori business, and it's really that value base and the focus on whānau and community and the wider outcomes of, I guess, the environmental and acknowledgement of te taiao and the wider environment and how that all comes together. So each of us is talking about our own topic, but you can't separate it out and talk about one thing of it on its own, because it all weaves in together. So while you were talking, I'm thinking, yes, it's so imperative that we always look at things as a whole, which is what we're doing and what came together quite nicely in this report. So the first thing, I guess, when I thought about talking about planet, I thought about our connection to whenua. And when we were talking the other day, Kylee talked about how whenua is part of our whakapapa, and it's so true. When we say our pepeha, we talk about our maunga and we talk about our awa and all of those life force beings that make up who we are. And so for me, our whenua, I live on Tupuna whenua where I am and have a connection. We're on Papakainga, we're surrounded by whānau, and it's just an integral part of who we are as Māori. And as Māori in business, you bring all of those elements into your business because it's just part of who you are. I also thought about the concept of kaitiakitanga and what that means. Tiaki is to look after or to care for. When you put kai in front of that word, you put a person to that word. So it's somebody who cares or looks after. And tanga is the action of doing. So it's how you go about caring and looking after usually the environment or the wider world. And that's what we intrinsically feel and do as Māori. So when we look at ESG, which is around environmental, social governance, we bring that value base into that. And it was a no-brainer that we were going to rank highly when we ran the survey in the stat. So 88% of our Māori businesses felt that they were environmentally sustainable, which you would expect it to be high, but 88% was really high. And these are SMEs, these are small Māori businesses. So we see it often in the larger corporates or in your iwi space, but these are our mum and dad businesses, our small whānau run businesses. So for them to feel that their business is environmentally sustainable was fantastic to see. And it's things like, when I looked at it, it was, you know, what were they doing? They were turning off their electricity, they were recycling, they were paperless, and doing all those few little actions, but all of that comes together to make a difference. And I think when we think about Māori business, it's about that long-term view, that intergenerational focus. So whenever a decision is made, it's looking at the big picture. And then it was, what else can we do? So when we looked at what our Māori businesses were doing, they seem to be doing this really well, but they're not reporting on it. And so they're not telling their story, our smaller Māori businesses. We see iwi and hapu doing it in their annual report to some degree, but our smaller Māori SMEs are not reporting on this fantastic contribution they're making to the wider community. And so this was something that was picked up. If there was a tool out there, ideally that had a Te Ao Māori lens over the top of it, a lot of our Māori businesses said we would use that to be able to report. And with climate change at the forefront, we've got COP26 that has recently happened. We've got the government bringing in legislation around carbon footprint reporting. We've got all these things happening. We've got local councils saying we need an environmental plan. And so all of these things are issues that our Māori businesses are facing, and they just need some assistance in that regard, how to report. So that's what you were talking about, Phil, in regard to a part of it is impact reporting, which is around the social side. And because Māori business are community and whānau focused, they're doing a lot out in that social arena. But again, it's not being told. So some support in that area is what came through on the feedback that we received from our respondents. So that was really key. I don't know, I'll just check if there's any questions.
Can I just add, Ange, just while you were talking, I was thinking about the Indigenous mindset and how you talked about how our people, planet, profit is interwoven into us as Māori. And I think it's really important that for Māori in business, we recognise that as a superpower. You know, that is something that's quite unique in the business environment where we do everything linear. You know, we kind of slice and dice and then do it linear. Well, Māori don't think like that. And I think the movement forward needs more of this integrated thinking rather than less, and more of the impact integrated reporting rather than less. The XRB at the moment are working on a project around a reporting framework that fits better for Māori organisations, because our current reporting framework doesn't really hit the mark for us. And really they are talking about integrated reporting. I did think, you know, you were key in saying that these are values-based organisations. And we naturally lean into our strengths with the people planet weave, and we've for some reason on our journey lost our weave of the profit thread, for whatever reason that's happened. But when I think pre-colonisation and our people's survival through to today, we always had resource managers, because that's essentially what you're doing when you're looking after the money, or the puti, is you're managing a resource. And we're really strong at resource management. We just feel sometimes like the dollars or the profit is not our area of strength, where it actually is and always has been. And I think we need to, on that new journey, regain our confidence around that piece. I did also think, when you were just talking, sorry, about the environmental plans, I thought, gee, there's such an opportunity in the market for a kaupapa Māori-led environmental reporting consultancy firm, you know. So I don't know who's online today, but there's my words of wisdom. Go out and set up one, because you'll be bloody good at it.
Thanks, Kylie. That actually would be a great business opportunity for someone, because a lot of our asset bases in our whenua, so we look at our ahu whenua trusts, you know, the land holdings there and are huge, and that's what generates a lot of the wealth, or intergenerational wealth, for hapu and iwi. So yeah, there's probably quite a lot. If there's an IT person out there who can develop a measurement tool for the Te Ao Māori lens, there you go. Just giving you $1 million idea there. Kia ora. So I guess in regards to our report, have you got any further feedback that either of you would like to give?
I think you've covered it well there. I might be a bit early on saying this, but I'm aware that Kylie had a very interesting interview this morning, and there were a couple of really interesting anecdotes that came out of that. Maybe Kylie could just share a few things.
Yeah, I think what was interesting for me was, whilst the interview was around the report, there was a good dialogue on the report and the findings, but the biggest curiosity was, where to from here? And, you know, what's your best advice for us as Māori in business moving forward? And yeah, and I hadn't anticipated that as being the crux of the conversation, but I think it was quite important, and maybe something that I'd overlooked. So, you know, what we talked about was the need to be nimble in this current environment. And we used the last lockdown as an example. So for me, maybe I was naive and unaware of it, but I felt like within 24 hours we went into lockdown, and I thought, where did that come from? So we used that as an analogy, and we said, okay, so if you're in business and you're trading, you get 24 hours and the doors are going to be shut, you know, what do you need to do? And we talked about, you know, you normally have some way of looking after and measuring your cash flows. You need to change your strategy really fast. So in this current environment, to be resilient, it's about having an open mind to quick change, being able to adapt, whether that means getting more online with tech in regards to, say, the retail space. But, you know, key to it was to keep your resilience up and be open to change fast. And what we also talked about was, as Māori in business, we're quite adept at dealing with adverse events when they come our way. So to really lean into that strength, and to lean into our cultural resilience around how we adapt to change quick. And we had quite a good conversation in regards to, yeah, that metric of looking after your finances, adapting quick, being able to make change, and being resilient. So yeah, so that was a good part of the conversation. But we did also talk a little bit about debt, which was interesting. We talked about the need to, you know, sustainably manage debt, and to not get caught into the trap of, well, it's only going to cost me this much for this little thing, whereas you get a whole lot of little things, and before you know it, you're caught in this debt trap, which is quite suffocating at times, and actually quite challenging to work your way through. So we had the conversation more at the level of as if we were two nannies giving advice to our mokopuna, in the sense of the conversation, but it sort of rings true across the generations. You know, manage your finances well, manage your budget, manage your money, and be careful of debt, and make sure whatever you get into, got good plans and it's sustainable going forward.
I think those are key points, Kylie. When we look at this day and age, you mentioned tech, and COVID certainly pushed us into that digital arena, whether we were ready or not, and everything's become virtual. I mean, look at us today doing virtual lives.
I see.
And was,
sorry, and I see a question from Anthony Rerenga Hou. So he just sort of talked about, the 60% of people that are feeling positive going forward. There was something like, gosh, it was around the 40% mark. I'm going to start doing these numbers off the top of my head. 37% that were finding it really tough, but 60% of the survey respondents were feeling really positive about the pathway forward. Now, Anthony just said, I think Kylie's just answered it in my last kōrero, but Anthony, for me, that is about our ability to be resilient, to always be hopeful. Resilience, when you're resilient, your glass is half full. And that's a key to resilience. You're always thinking, yeah, it's bloody, to be careful with my language, it's bloody rubbish today, but tomorrow is going to be better. And I think that is something that us as Māori continually do. I mean, we've had to survive through colonisation, and that's a big part of our survival journey. So it's a bit in our DNA, and I think we need to lean into that. We just need to, I often find, for me personally, I have good people around me who can help get me perspective on my overwhelming positivity, because sometimes I do need to know there are some risks out there. And I make sure I have good people that I trust that are telling me about those things, not for any other reason, but that they want to keep me safe. So make sure I have good advisors that do that for me, but equally I'm always erring, on the glass half full side. And I think that's part of the 60%, Anthony.
Yeah, I agree, Kylie. It's good to have those people in your life that are your beacons, but also your anchors that keep you grounded. And our report is Whakatere Nga Rerenga Hou, which is about charting those new courses. And when I looked at people feeling positive about the future and having that business confidence, it does come back to having that long-term strategic thinking and knowing that COVID's just a wave that we're hitting. It's a storm that we're in now, but we can see that there's calm waters on the other side, and there's light at the end of the tunnel. And thinking about that tech side as well, in that digital space, I think that drove, one of the things that surprised me was our borders are closed, yet our Māori businesses are even more interested in exporting their goods and trading globally, which was a bit of a paradigm, but interesting all the same. So I totally agree with you there. I see we've got a slide up at the moment around our Whakatere Nga Rerenga scholarship, which comes back to what you talked about earlier, is around resourcing. It's around bringing through Māori into these spaces to become accountants, to become financially adept, and to help. I guess I'll start where only last stats that I saw were 2% of all our accountants are Māori, and we really need more Māori in this space. And one way we can do that is to break down some of those financial barriers that occur, whether you're in the city or in the regions. And being up in Tautokere, one of the barriers we have, and you'd see it too, is we don't have universities nearby. And so just trying to find ways to bring our rangatahi through, or even our adult learners through, to give them a helping hand and help that resource. Because whether they want to become chartered accountants for an accountancy firm, or whether they want to move into a different space and work for their iwi or hapu, or even in their own business that they're driving forward, it's just about providing some form of support and pathway for them to do that. So if this helps one more Māori come through on that accounting profession, that's what we're hoping to do. So just a bit of a plug here for our Whakatere Nga Rerenga scholarship. Kylie, I don't know if you want to say something, because I know this is close to your heart as well.
Yeah, I think for a long time, me and a colleague, Wayne Pānapa, who both of us in our journey had worked, I kind of say alongside Sir Henare, but what I would say is quite a few steps behind Sir Henare, symbolically. And for a long time, we have reflected on his mana, his prestige, his excellence, his integrity. And we've felt in the accounting profession, as the first Māori accountant, there should be an award, which the Māori Accountants Network started this year, and a scholarship in his name. And And so it's with great pride, I think, for us as Ngāti Porou on the East Coast to have this scholarship go out into the marketplace. And the key really is, as Ange has said, is to encourage more Māori into the profession. And as BDO, we sort of think, well, what is something we can do? Because we can only do so much. But hey, we have the ability to provide some funding to bridge that equity gap. You know, where there might be a Māori child who would really otherwise go into this space, but because of lack of resources may not go down that avenue. So we felt like it was a gesture towards helping bridge that equity gap. And as well, the challenge we've got in regards to having skilled accountants in the marketplace. As I talked about earlier, for some reason we've lost sight of profits and we don't feel like it's a part of who we are as Māori. And so this is all about trying to regain our confidence in the financial space and our financial acumen for those who are interested. And one thing I will say for those that are online that will have whānau, a little bit of inside knowledge. We only have 3 applicants so far, so it's going to be a relatively high chance that if you get someone to apply that they could be successful. So please push out to your whānau for anyone that you know who's going through their studies. It's a fantastic scholarship, you know, not only a financial, but there's tools, there's access to the Māori Accountants Network by funding a participant and work experience. So yeah, please push it out. I think people might be surprised in their success.
Thanks, Kylie. I think that's all that we have in regards to the report and what we've covered today. I've loved catching up with you guys. It's so nice to see both of you here today. You know, we've whānau, BDO whānau, so it's always great to chat and to go through. Well, this report was fantastic just to share some of the highlights. So if we don't have anything further to do, I will thank everybody for joining today and ask Kylie, Phil or Kylie, if you've got any final words, and then Kylie, if you could close out with karakia, that would be great. Well done.
Yeah, just in closing, want to tautoko what everyone said, and also that question was a very good one. So thank you for bringing that through. I think just to close, the best days are ahead. There's a real willingness and increasing openness in the marketplace to partner, joint venture together like I've never seen before. So I think it's a really, really good opportunity for Māori in business and Māori businesses to really, really step up to the plate and just embrace really these exciting themes and opportunities going forward. So I just want to wish everyone all the very best heading into 2022. So hek ona.
Kia ora, thank you, Philip. Yeah, I think just in closing from me is, you know, I think it's time that we sort of put 2021 to bed and time to look forward to the bright lights of 2022. I think as, you know, as a nation, we've learned a lot, and as individuals, we've also learned a lot. So, you know, I do wish everyone well and safety in the festive season. We're about to traverse the traffic light system as a nation, and I think that'll be a potential growing pain for us on this journey with this pandemic. But I think, you know, as Māori and Māori in business, believe in ourselves, we've got the resilience, we've got the strength, and, you know, and we will navigate it just as well as anyone else out there globally. Before I close off with a karakia, I just want to acknowledge that, you know, karakia is about giving thanks, and I want to give thanks to everyone here today, and on behalf of myself and Ange, just to express our gratitude for your time. So kia tau, kia tātou katoa, te atawhai o tō tātou ariki, eihu karaiti, me te aroha o te atua, me te whiwhinga taitanga ki te wairua tapu, ake, 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 amen.
Amene. Kia ora.